You know what they don't tell you about love, that it can turn into your worst nightmare in the blink of an eye, that the man who promises to protect you can become the one who destroys you. I'm Evelyn Harper. I'm 68 years old. And I'm going to tell you about the day my husband threw me and our 3-day-old twins onto the street in the middle of the night. And if you think you know how this story ends, I promise you you don't. Stay with me. Every word of what I'm about to tell you is true, and it might save someone's life, maybe even yours. I grew up in a small town outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My parents owned a hardware store on Main Street. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. We weren't rich, but we were happy. I had everything a girl could want: a warm home, parents who loved me, a future that felt safe and certain. Then, in March of 1977, when I was 19 years old, everything burned. Our house caught fire in the middle of the night, faulty wiring in the walls. My father went back inside to get my mother. Neither of them came out. I was at a friend's house that night, studying for exams. I came home at dawn to find nothing but ashes and 2 body bags being loaded into an ambulance. I had no siblings, no grandparents left alive. The only family I had was my mother's sister, Aunt Clara, who lived in Philadelphia. She was 64 years old, never married, worked as a seamstress in a bridal shop. She took me in without hesitation, gave me her spare bedroom, helped me finish my last year of high school in a new city where I knew no one. I lived with Aunt Clara for 3 years. She taught me to sew, to be independent, to stand on my own 2 feet. I worked part-time at a department store, saved my money, planned to go to secretarial school. Then Aunt Clara had a stroke in January of 1980. She died 3 days later in Pennsylvania hospital, holding my hand. And just like that, I was alone again, completely alone. At 22 years old, I'd lost everyone who'd ever loved me. The landlord gave me 30 days to vacate Aunt Clara's apartment. I couldn't afford the rent on my department store wages. I had nowhere to go, no family to call, no safety net. I was staring down the barrel of homelessness, and I was terrified. That's when I met Robert Harper. He came into the department store one Saturday afternoon in February 1980, looking for a tie. He was 25 years old, a junior associate at a law firm downtown, confident and handsome. He flirted with me, asked me to dinner right there at the counter. I should have said no. I should have seen the intensity in his eyes for what it was: not passion, but something darker. But I was desperate and alone and so tired of being afraid. When a successful man showed interest in me, it felt like a life raft being thrown to a drowning woman. We dated for 4 months. He was attentive, always wanting to know where I was and who I was with. I thought it meant he cared deeply. I thought it was romantic. I was so desperate for someone to belong to that I mistook surveillance for love. When he proposed in June of 1980, I said yes immediately. We got married 3 weeks later at City Hall in Philadelphia. No family, no big celebration. I had no one to invite, and Robert said he wanted it intimate. I wore a simple white dress I'd made myself. I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world, but almost immediately, things changed. Robert would come home and interrogate me about my day. Who did I talk to? Did any men speak to me? Why was I smiling? Who was I thinking about? If the mailman said hello, Robert would accuse me of flirting. If a male coworker called about work, Robert would stand over me listening to every word. If I wore makeup, he'd ask who I was trying to impress. I walked on eggshells every single day, trying to be perfect, trying to avoid triggering his jealousy. But there was no pattern to it, no way to predict what would set him off. Robert had a younger brother named Michael. He was 19 in 1980, working construction, sweet and easygoing in a way Robert never was. Michael would stop by our apartment sometimes after work with his girlfriend Linda, bringing pizza. Those visits were the only times I felt Robert relax, the only times our apartment felt like a home instead of a prison. Michael had two best friends from high school, Donnie and Kyle. They'd come over sometimes on Friday nights with their girlfriends. We'd sit around our kitchen table, eating takeout, playing cards, laughing. Those were the only good memories I have from that marriage. But even then, I'd catch Robert watching me. His eyes would narrow when I'd laugh at Danny's jokes. He'd tense up when Kyle would ask how work was going. He'd make sure I was never alone with any of them for even a moment. In October of 1980, I found out I was pregnant. When I saw those two pink lines, I cried with joy. I thought a baby would fix everything. I thought it would make Robert see how much I loved him. I told him that evening I'd made his favorite meal, set the table with candles, wore the blue dress he'd bought me. When he walked in and saw the setup, he stopped in the doorway. "What's all this?" he asked, suspicious even of a nice dinner. "I have wonderful news," I said. "Robert, we're going to have a baby." The silence that followed felt like drowning. He didn't smile, didn't move, just stood there staring at me with cold eyes. When he finally asked, "The doctor says late June, early July." I watched him count backwards in his head, checking dates. "That means you got pregnant in September or October." "Yes, remember, Labor Day weekend." He didn't answer, just turned and walked out of the apartment. He didn't come back until after midnight, reeking of whiskey. He slept on the couch, and he never once congratulated me. The months that followed were the loneliest of my life. By December, the doctor told me I was carrying twins. Instead of being excited, Robert became even more distant, even more suspicious. He started coming home at random times, trying to catch me doing something wrong. He'd go through my purse while I slept, check the mileage on our car, call my work to verify I was really there. "Twins don't run in my family," he'd say, like it was an accusation. "Do they run in yours?" "I don't know," I'd say, because my parents were dead, because I had no one to ask. Thought the pregnancy was difficult. By my 6th month, I had gestational diabetes and high blood pressure. The doctor put me on bed rest, which meant I had to quit my job. Now, I was completely dependent on Robert financially, trapped in that apartment, isolated from everyone. Michael and Linda were angels during those months. They'd stop by with groceries, help me clean, keep me company. Danny's wife Patricia would bring me homemade soup. Kyle's girlfriend Susan would sit with me and watch soap operas, just so I wouldn't be alone all day. But every act of kindness just made Robert more suspicious. Who was here? What did they want? How long did they stay? On June 18, 1981, at 4 in the morning, my water broke. Robert drove me to Pennsylvania Hospital in silence. Didn't hold my hand. Didn't tell me it would be okay. The labor lasted 16 hours. 16 hours of agony that I endured mostly alone. Robert sat in a chair in the corner reading legal briefs, barely looking at me. One nurse, an older woman named Ruth, held my hand through the worst contractions and whispered, "You're doing so good, baby. You're so strong." At 8:43 p.m., my daughter was born, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark, almost black hair. She came out screaming, her little fists clenched, ready to fight the world. At 9:07 p.m., my son was born, 5 pounds, 9 ounces, with light brown hair that was almost blonde. He was quieter, calmer, his eyes squeezed shut. Nurse Ruth placed them both on my chest, and I felt love so powerful I thought my heart would explode. I looked at Robert through my tears, expecting to see that same love reflected in his eyes. Instead, he stood up, walked to the bed, looked down at our babies, and said 5 words that destroyed my entire world. "They don't look like me." The room went completely silent. Even the babies seemed to stop making noise. "What did you say?" I whispered. "I said they don't look like me, Evelyn." His voice was calm, clinical. "Look at them. The girl has black hair. The boy has blonde hair. I have brown hair. You have light brown hair. How do you explain that?" Robert, Nurse Ruth started, but he cut her off. This is statistically improbable, unless there's another father involved. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The babies started crying again, and I just held them tighter while tears streamed down my face. Whose children are these? Evelyn. Is it Michael? My own brother. Get out. Nurse Ruth was yelling. Security. I need security in here now. 2 security guards escorted Robert out. I could hear him yelling in the hallway, demanding a paternity test, threatening lawsuits, and I just lay there holding my newborn babies, sobbing, while Nurse Ruth stroked my hair and whispered, "You're safe now, honey." But I wasn't safe. I wouldn't be safe for a very long time. I stayed in the hospital for 4 days. Robert came once, brought me a bag of clothes, dropped it without a word, and left. He didn't ask about the babies, didn't want to know their names. The nurses took care of me. Nurse Ruth worked double shifts just to make sure someone was there with me. These strangers showed me more compassion than my own husband ever had. I named them Sarah and James, after characters in a book Aunt Clara used to read to me. Sarah, my fierce girl with dark hair. James, my gentle boy with light hair. They were perfect. They were innocent, and they were being punished for sins they didn't commit. When we were discharged, Michael came to pick us up, not Robert. He helped me into his truck, carefully secured the car seats. Linda was in the passenger seat, her eyes full of worry. We arrived at my apartment around 3 in the afternoon on Monday, June 22, 1981. Michael and Linda helped me inside, made sure I had everything I needed. Linda had stocked my refrigerator. Michael had installed new locks. "If he tries anything," Michael said, pressing his phone number into my hand, "you call me immediately." They left reluctantly, and I was alone with my babies in that apartment that no longer felt like home. I fed them, changed them, tried to get them on some kind of schedule. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Robert came home at 7 that evening. I'd managed to get both babies down for a nap. I'd made dinner. I was still hoping that when he saw me trying, something in him would soften. He walked in, looked at me, standing in the kitchen, and his face was like stone. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay," I replied, my stomach knotting with fear. "Sit down, Evelyn." I sat at the kitchen table. He remained standing, towering over me. "I've made a decision. I want a paternity test. Until I get one, I don't want those children in this apartment. And I don't want you here either." The world tilted. "What? You heard me. I want you out tonight." "Robert, I just had major surgery 4 days ago. I can barely walk. I'm bleeding. Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my concern. You should have thought about that before you cheated on me." "I never cheated on you." I was screaming. "These are your children. Pack your things. You have 1 hour." I don't remember packing. I ended up with a garbage bag full of baby clothes and diapers. I remember putting the babies in their car seats, my hands shaking. I remember Robert standing in the doorway watching me struggle, not helping. I got the babies outside onto the sidewalk. It was almost 9 at night, still warm, but getting dark. I stood there with my 2 sleeping babies in their carriers, a garbage bag of belongings, and no idea where to go. Michael's truck came screeching around the corner. He jumped out and ran toward the apartment, but I caught his arm. "Don't, it'll only make things worse." But Robert had come outside. "Get away from her, Michael. You're throwing your wife and newborn children out onto the street. They're not my children, and if you keep defending her, I'll know for certain that you're the father." Danny and Kyle showed up then. They tried to reason with Robert, but he turned his rage on all of them, accused them all of conspiring against him, of taking turns with his wife. In the chaos, I just walked away. I picked up my garbage bag, took a baby carrier in each hand, and started walking down the street. I walked until my legs started giving out, until the bleeding got so bad I was afraid I'd pass out. I sat down on the steps of a closed storefront, my babies on either side of me, and I cried. I cried for the life I'd thought I'd have. I cried for my parents, for Aunt Clara. I cried because I was completely alone in the world with two helpless babies and nowhere to go. That's when I saw her, a small elderly woman carrying cloth shopping bags. She stopped right in front of me, set down her bags, and looked at me with the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. "How old are those babies, dear?" she asked. Her voice had a slight Irish accent. "4 days old," I whispered. She looked at the babies, then at me, then at the garbage bag. She didn't ask questions, just picked up her shopping bags and said, "Come with me, child. You can't sit out here all night." Her name was Margaret Callahan. She was 74 years old, had lived in Philadelphia since 1929 when she came over from Ireland as a young bride. She lived in a row house about 4 blocks away, and she took me there without hesitation. The house smelled like wool and tea. She had me sit on her couch while she took the babies, one in each arm. She cooed to them in her Irish accent, told them they were beautiful, told them they were safe now. She made me tea and toast. She helped me to her spare bedroom, which had a double bed with a patchwork quilt. She brought in the babies' carriers and set them next to the bed. "You'll stay here tonight," she said firmly. "Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." I stayed that night, and the next night, and the night after that. Days turned into weeks, and Margaret never once suggested I should leave. Margaret was a weaver. She'd learned the craft as a girl in Ireland, and she'd been weaving for over 60 years. Her basement was filled with looms, spools of wool in every color, half-finished pieces draped everywhere. When Sarah and James were about 6 weeks old, Margaret asked if I'd like to learn. "You need something to do besides worry," she said. "And I need help. My hands aren't what they used to be." So she taught me. I was terrible at first, but Margaret was patient. "Weaving is like life," she'd say. "You can't rush it. You just have to take it one thread at a time and trust that eventually you'll see the pattern." I spent hours in that basement over the months and years. The twins would play on blankets nearby, and I'd weave. Margaret would take my pieces to craft fairs and split the money with me 50-50, insisting I save it. Meanwhile, Robert filed for divorce. The papers arrived 3 months after he'd thrown us out. He was divorcing me on grounds of adultery, demanding a paternity test, seeking full custody of the children he claimed weren't his. Margaret knew a lawyer through her church who took my case pro bono. The paternity test was done in October of 1981. The results came back 3 weeks later. Robert Harper was the biological father of both children with 99.99% certainty. Robert challenged the results, demanded a second test. The second test came back with the same results. The divorce was finalized in March of 1982. I got full custody. Robert was ordered to pay child support and given visitation rights. He never used the visitation, never paid the child support either. He knew how to hide assets, how to work the system, but I didn't need his money. Margaret and I were building something. By 1985, I was good, really good. My pieces were selling for serious money. One evening, Margaret said, "You know what we should do? We should open a proper workshop, a real business." "Margaret, that would take money." "I have money," she said, "from my husband's life insurance. I'm 78 years old. What am I saving it for?" We found a space in Fishtown, an old textile factory. We spent 6 months cleaning it up. Michael, Danny, and Kyle helped with the construction. On March 15, 1986, we opened Callahan Weavers, named after Margaret. It started small, just me and Margaret and one other weaver. We made custom rugs and tapestries. Sarah and James, now almost 5, would come after kindergarten. They'd help sort wool, learn simple patterns. They grew up with the sound of shuttles clicking and the smell of lanolin. The business grew. We hired more women, mostly immigrants and single mothers and women who'd been through hard times. We paid fair wages, offered flexible hours. We created a workspace that felt like family. The twins grew up, Sarah became bold and outspoken, fiercely protective. James was gentler, more artistic. They knew their father had left us, but I'd spared them the worst details. Until Sarah was 16 and found the divorce papers. She came to me pale and shaking. He threw us out when we were 4 days old. He accused you of cheating. I couldn't lie, so I told them everything. James cried, but Sarah's face went hard. We should go see him, she said. We have a right to know what kind of man does that. So in the spring of 1997, I drove them to Robert's law office. He was 42 now, a full partner, successful and wealthy. When we were announced, the look on his face was pure shock. These are your children, I said quietly. They wanted to meet you. Sarah stepped forward. We wanted to see the man who threw his wife and newborn babies onto the street because he was too paranoid to believe the truth, who never paid to support us, who never tried to see us. She looked at him. I have your nose. James has your chin. The paternity tests proved we're yours. But you know what? We don't need you. We never did. Mom raised us. Margaret gave us a home. You gave us nothing. We left after that. My children had faced their demon. And Margaret died in the winter of 2003. She was 92 years old. At her funeral, the church was packed. Every woman who'd ever worked at the factory, every person she'd helped out in her will. She left me her house and what remained of her savings. But more importantly, she left me a letter. Dearest Evelyn, it said, I didn't save you that night. You saved yourself. All I did was give you time and space to remember your own strength. Keep the factory going. Keep helping women. You've built something beautiful. Love, always, Margaret. Sarah went to business school. James went to art school. Both came back to work at Callahan Weavers. Sarah handled the business side. James led the design team. We opened a second location in 2010, then a third in 2015. We employed 35 women, created apprenticeship programs, partnered with domestic violence shelters. The factory became more than a business. It became a place where broken things could be mended. 3 months ago, Robert showed up at my office. 44 years of silence, and then there he was. He looked old, 70 now, white hair, lined face. He moved slowly, looked diminished. I wanted to see what you built, he said quietly. Michael talks about how successful you've become. We've done well, I said. Despite you. He flinched. I know I can't apologize, but I wanted you to know I was wrong. I destroyed our family because I was paranoid and cruel. Yes, I said simply. You did. I remarried, had 2 more kids, but they're grown now and we barely speak. I've spent my whole life pushing away everyone who ever loved me. Why are you really here, Robert? I'm sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Maybe 3 months. He looked at me with desperate eyes. Do you think Sarah and James would want to see me before I die? That's not my decision to make, I said firmly. They're adults. I can tell them you asked, but I won't pressure them. Sarah chose not to see him. James went once. Alone. He never told me what they talked about. Robert died 6 weeks ago. There was a small funeral. James went. Sarah and I didn't. I didn't feel triumph or grief. I felt relief that this final chapter was closed. I'm sitting here now in my office at the factory. Through the window, I can see the floor with its rows of looms, spools of colored wool, half-finished pieces that will become someone's treasure. In a few hours, the women will arrive. Sarah will stop by to go over contracts. James will call about the new collection we're launching. My life is full. My heart, shattered at 26, healed into something stronger than it ever was before. If you're watching this and you're in your own dark place right now, maybe someone you trusted has betrayed you. Maybe you're wondering how you'll survive tomorrow. I want you to know something. You're stronger than whatever is trying to break you. When Robert threw me out with 2 4-day-old babies, I genuinely didn't know if I'd survive. I had no family, no money, nowhere to go. I sat on those steps and I thought my life was over. But Margaret appeared, and maybe you're thinking, nobody's going to appear for me. But here's what I learned. Margaret appeared because I kept walking, because I didn't give up, because I picked up my babies and moved forward, even when I had no idea where I was going. If I'd stayed in that apartment, Margaret never would have found me. The miracle happened because I kept moving. You take it one thread at a time. You don't have to see the whole pattern yet. You just have to take the next step, get through the next day. And one day, years from now, you'll look back and realize you survived. You'll realize you built something beautiful from the broken pieces. You'll realize the person who tried to destroy you didn't get the final word. You did. Bye. My final word is this: factory. These women, my children and grandchildren, this life I built thread by thread, year by year. Robert's final word was dying alone, full of regrets. I won. Not because I got revenge, but because I survived, because I turned my pain into purpose. That's what I want for you. I want you to survive. And then I want you to take whatever tried to break you and turn it into something beautiful. I'm 68 years old now. My hands show arthritis, like Margaret's did. I don't weave as much, but I still can. I still sit at the loom sometimes in the early morning when the factory is quiet. The rhythm soothes me. The pattern emerging from chaos reminds me of what's possible. And I think about that terrified 26-year-old girl on the street corner, holding 2 babies, with nowhere to go. And I want to reach back through time and tell her, you're going to make it. You're going to build something beautiful. You're going to help so many people. You're going to be happy. That girl became me. And whoever you are right now, whatever darkness you're facing, you can become someone stronger too. Someone who survives. Someone who proves that the people who hurt you don't get to write your ending. You write your ending, thread by thread, day by day. That's how you rebuild a life. That's how you survive. That's how you win.